conduct of any kind, and it's unsafe in various other ways. So it's not really a question, it's now a statement. You know, I'm not saying the Unitarian Universalist religious community is totally unsafe, but it's definitely, you know, not nearly as safe as it could be or should be if it actually practiced what it preached. You know, one of the sad things is that the Unitarian Universalist religious community have all these principles and ideals that speak about justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, speak about free and responsible search for truth and meaning. If they just practice those, well, a lot of their problems would cease to exist. But they unfortunately are extreme hypocrites and don't practice those principles. So it's unfortunate, but the vast majority of Unitarian Universalists I knew do a terrible job of living up to Unitarian Universalist principles and ideals. So these two women are heading into the church. They did look recognizable as churchgoers. So, as I said, we'll just continue circulating here. It's sort of one of the requirements for peaceful public protest is you can't just stand in one spot. And I mean, I think you can actually in certain circumstances. You know, you can set up a booth and that kind of thing. But in the past, you know, SPVM police officers have kind of insisted that I circulate. So I circulate, you know, as much as I can. So obviously if I get in a conversation with someone, I'm going to stop and talk with them and that sort of thing. But, you know, I try to honor the parameters of peaceful public protest that we have. So we shall continue our little Sunday constitutional. I kind of sarcastically refer to this walk in front of the Unitarian Church in Montreal as my Sunday constitutional, and of course it has a double meaning. Constitutional in the sense of a walk for the purposes of exercise. That's one meaning of the word constitutional. And of course the other one being constitutional as in exercising one's constitutionally guaranteed civil rights and liberties, which includes, but are not limited to, protesting against Unitarian, whoops, I forgot the G in clergy. Okay, I better fix that. So Unitarian clergy abuse sucks. So I think people know what I'm talking about, but nonetheless we will correct that little typo there that I did not notice previously. Let's make sure we don't have any other typos. Unitarians misuse blasphemy law to cover up child sex abuse. Yeah, that looks pretty okay in terms of the correct spelling. So yeah, we'll find my chalk and we shall put a G between the R and the Y in clergy. Well, we got just a nice tiny little piece of chalk to do the job. So see somebody coming this way who has in the past been involved in erasing my chalk slogans. I should perhaps say a thing or two about that to him as he goes by. Stares up at me. So thanks so much for taking action in the world by participating in cover-up and denial of pedophilia and rape committed by certain Unitarian Universalist ministers, and shaking your head in what's known as willful ignorance and psychological denial, sir. So as I confronted him about his participation in cover-up and denial of clergy sex abuse by erasing my chalk slogans, he didn't do the actual erasing, but he helped the people get the hose out and back and so on. So he was a participant. And of course, when I confronted him about that, he just shakes his head as though I don't know what I'm talking about. But in fact, Another big problem with Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse is not just Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse, but pretty much any clergy abuse in any religious community. One of the big problems in terms of trying to get some real justice is that the members of the church just bury their heads in the sand when they're confronted by this. They just go into willful ignorance and psychological denial. They just don't want to know. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I was, talking to one of the church women here, and I brought up the subject of pedophilia and rape, and she goes, "What pedophilia and rape?" As though there was none. I said, you're not trying to say that there's no pedophilia and rape, are you? And we got into this discussion, and at a certain point, I said, you just don't want to know. And she came back with, "Yes, you're right. I don't want to know." So that just sort of underlines the willful ignorance and psychological denial that not only Montreal Unitarians and other Unitarian Universalists wallow in when confronted by clergy abuse, but essentially, the willful ignorance and psychological denial that most religious communities wallow in when these things occur. They just don't want to know. They much prefer that it's covered up and hidden and nobody knows about it. They really, as church members, very, very few want to know about these things, or certainly don't want to do anything about it, because if they did want to do anything about it, well, it would have been done by now. If the members of the Unitarian Church of Montreal wanted to deal responsibly with the reasons for my protest, well, they could have done so in the last 20 years, because I haven't actually been outdoors protesting for 20 years, but I initially filed my first complaint in 1996. So that's 20 years. It's actually over 20 years. In fact, my initial complaint about issues dates back to, I believe, October of 1995. My peaceful public protest in front of the church dates back to May 1998. So in May 2018, it's going to be 20 years of protesting in front of this church. And the reason the protest has gone on for 20 years is because in that 20-year time period, not only have Montreal Unitarians done absolutely nothing to respond in responsibility to the reasons for my protest, but they've done incredibly foolish things that only seek to prolong the protest, that only seek to, well, I shouldn't say seek to, because they're probably not seeking to escalate the situation, but the result is that as a result of their actions in the world, Montreal Unitarians have actually escalated this conflict, and through their negligence, it has also been escalated by the Unitarian Universalist Association. So even if Montreal Unitarians, in some situations haven't escalated the protest by their negligence, by doing nothing to deal with the situation, that has allowed for escalation on other fronts, such as when the Unitarian Universalist Association falsely accused me of the criminal act of blasphemous libel in 2012. I mean, this legal bullying was done by the head office in Boston. It has almost like zero reference to the Unitarian Church of Montreal in it. It's all about the Emerson Avenger blog, and it's all about blog posts that talk about pedophiles and rapists in the United States, and also about abusive UU clergy like Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein's, verbal and psychological and emotional abuse and so on. So the legal bullying that took place in June of 2012 and is yet to end because it has not been withdrawn, it was initiated by the Unitarian Universalist Association. Now it's possible that the church actually was involved. It might have been behind the scenes, the church asked the Unitarian Universalist Association to do something to shut me up. But there's nothing obvious in terms of a connection with the Unitarian Church of Montreal in that legal bullying. And yet, you know, if let's say in 2008, or, you know, Reverend Diane Rollert had responded positively to my calls for dialogue instead of seeking a restraining order against me, you know, this protest might have ended in 2008 or 2009, and that letter accusing me of blasphemous libel might never have been written. So as a result of the negligence of Reverend Diane Rollert and the leadership of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, the, you know, situation now is that I'm protesting against being falsely accused of blasphemous libel by the Unitarian Universalist Association. That situation did not exist prior to June of 2012. That situation could have been avoided completely if Reverend Diane Rollert and other leading members of the Unitarian Church of Montreal had worked towards some real justice. But no, Reverend Diane Rollert instead tried to force an end to my protest completely and permanently by seeking a restraining order against me, claiming to be very, very frightened of me, even though she had virtually no reason. As far as I'm concerned, she had zero reason, but I'm saying virtually just to leave it. You know, maybe there was some tiny little reason that she might have possibly had to be somewhat frightened of me, but I don't think there's any real valid reason for Reverend Diane Rollert to be very, very frightened of me, fearing for her personal safety, which is what she claimed in her depositions to the police and in her sworn testimony in court. And I know for a fact that Reverend Diane Rollert did in fact lie about certain things, because in the court hearings I questioned Reverend Diane Rollert, and on at least 2 occasions she lied in her response. And I tried to you know, go into that more deeply with further cross-examination to show that she was lying and to, you know, cast doubt on her claims to be